My parents ignored and forgot about me on their wedding, so I exposed them and they got mad. I know this seems like a weird situation, but I just feel so angry and depressed that I feel the need to vent even if no one is listening. So I, 17F, was recently forgotten about on the day of my parents' wedding. My parents have been together for about 25 years, but they never actually got married. That's why when my dad, 50M, proposed to my mother, 49F, on their anniversary, which they have always celebrated on the date my mother found out she was pregnant with my eldest sister, even if they were already together before, everyone, including me, was elated and celebrated the occasion with great joy. This happened all the way back in February. They immediately jumped into wedding planning, deciding very early on a small event in Hawaii, with just the closest family and friends for an intimate ceremony. Almost immediately, my mother asked my sister, 25F, to be her maid of honor, and my dad asked my brother, 22M, to be his groomsman. I wasn't surprised or offended by this. My sister had always been a mommy's girl, and they both enjoyed spending time with each other shopping and socializing, so they had a very close bond, and the same goes for my father and brother. They always played football together and messed around with cars. My father even trained my brother's team for a while in middle school. That had always left me as the odd one out. I tried to insert myself on my family's hobbies and groups that they had within our home, but was always rebuffed. Maybe they could sense that my interest on their activities wasn't all that genuine, or maybe they just didn't care. Either way, I was used to being the last and least important member of my family. Mom had sis and dad had bro. My parents had each other, and my two siblings were closer to each other than they ever were to me, leaving me very lonely and isolated in my own home. During the preparation for the wedding, initially it was suggested that I be the flower girl, but my sister thought that role would be more appropriate for her daughter, 3F, so that idea was quickly tossed away. Later on, my maternal grandmother suggested that I might read a poem or do a little bit of a speech during the ceremony, but both my parents refused because they wanted the wedding to be low-key, and they didn't think a cheesy and sappy speech would fit their vision, their literal words. I was still okay with all of this, even though it hurt to know I would be the only member of the family to not actually be part of the wedding party or have any role at all on the day. As the day approached, my parents and siblings got more and more caught up on all the wedding planning. I noticed my mom didn't invite me dress shopping, and that whenever they would have discussions about the venue or the event, I was left out, so I decided to see if they would realize that I wasn't being involved at all and kept quiet, waiting for them to ask me something, anything, about the wedding, but that never happened. The wedding was set for 3 weeks ago, the end of August. The day before the departure, my mother casually asked if I had my luggage ready because we couldn't be late to the airport. I bluntly told her that I hadn't prepared anything. She got confused for a second and then snapped at me for not being prepared. I then asked her if I even had a ticket and her face went pale. Yep, they hadn't even bought me a ticket, and I'm not even sure if I had a room or any accommodations once there. Even though I was the only person in my family without a stable income, I work as a part-time babysitter, my parents had bought first-class tickets for my siblings and the couple other friends that were attending the wedding but had forgotten me. My mom told me not to make a big deal out of it, and that they can just find me a low-cost ticket last minute from a cheap airline. But I just replied by asking her, then what? Do I even have a dress for the ceremony? She went with sis to buy hers and all the other female guests months ago, but I wasn't included. That's when my father came in and just told me to suck it up and that I've never been a girly girl so I could just wear whatever. I got mad at this because even though I'm not the most feminine girl in the planet, I would have loved to be included in such an important part of my parents' wedding, and it was about the fact that I was excluded for literally everything that had been going on for months. We all got into a fight with them, calling me entitled and accusing me of making myself small intentionally so they would forget me, like that is a valid excuse for ignoring a child. They ended up telling me that if I was going to keep this attitude, I might as well skip the whole thing altogether, to which I responded with a defiant fine, and went to my room. Next morning, they all left for Hawaii without me. The ceremony was really small, but they all posted loads of pictures on Insta and Facebook about how perfect and magical that whole week was being. People realized quickly that I wasn't in any of the photos and asked my parents why, to which they replied that unfortunately I had caught COVID before the trip and had to stay behind. My blood boiled at this. I don't know why this was the straw that broke the camel back for me, but it was. I decided to take a COVID test and published a picture of myself holding the negative test and captioned it, "Not sick at all, just forgotten." I tagged everyone that had questioned my absence from the trip and the wedding in the picture, and for good measure, also every person invited to it. I also wrote in the comments about how my parents had literally forgotten about anything to do with me until the day before parting, and how they actually uninvited me. Most people were on my side, and others couldn't believe it, and thought there must be something more to the story than what I was saying. But one thing is for certain, I completely ruined my parents' wedding, and their day was overshadowed by my confession. At first, I felt quite satisfied with myself for standing up on my own, but after a barrage of messages from my family calling me every name in the book, and later, when they came back, them furiously attacking me for my immature actions and my spoiled behavior, my pride deflated quickly, and I began to feel awful. I hate my family, and I hate being in this house, but I'm a minor and can't leave just yet. I do feel like I could have handled the situation better though, and now I feel so depressed that I'm second-guessing everything I did, from not speaking up before to the way I exposed them. I also feel guilty for the lack of connection between all of my family and me, and maybe I could have done more. So am I the a-hole for ruining my parents' wedding when they forgot about me? Update 1. Hi everyone. I wanted to write an update earlier, but I'm still kind of a mess at the moment. But I figured since my post had such an overwhelming response and so many people commented and sent me messages that I should write about the latest developments. First of all, let me start by thanking all that commented on my post and shared their own experiences or points of view on my situation. Thank you so much. A few days ago, I could barely find the energy to get out of bed, and my family's comments had made me really believe that I was guilty for all that had passed. But after seeing the responses to my post and all the support you guys were giving me, I felt somewhat reaffirmed in my actions and feelings towards my family. I'm still fighting the feelings of guilt and depression, but whenever I start to spiral, I think on how much this community of strangers has had my back, and I try to calm myself down with your words. Thanks to your input and advice, I finally decided to call my grandma and tell her the full story. Just to clarify a point before going on, I said this in the comments, but I feel like I should put it here also. My grandma, 77F, did not attend the wedding. She lives several states away and has mobility issues, so she doesn't travel anymore. We went to visit her around Easter, and that's when she commented that I might read a poem at the ceremony, but that was the last time I saw her in person before all this. She's always been very loving to me, and has called out my parents in the past for their favoritism, but it's hard for her to play a more active role in my upbringing since she lives so far, and I'm always worried about bothering her due to her age and health condition. She had a minor stroke a few years back and is now back to normal, but I still worry. Anyway, I called her and laid out everything that had happened with the wedding and how my parents didn't even buy me a ticket to go with them. She came to the same conclusion that most commenters did when I told her that it was simply impossible, that they had forgotten and that they did it on purpose. I cried on the phone with her, laying out how I was feeling, how this has been going on forever, how I feel in the aftermath, and most importantly, about my need to get out. She was extremely sweet and comforting to me, and told me that I had nothing else to worry about because she had my back 100% and told me to take it easy, but make plans for my future, and that she'd help me. After that conversation, which lasted about 2 hours, I felt better, and I decided to listen to her and start moving to figure something out for the next school year. I have a friend who is going to lease a studio next to our future campus. She has a great relationship with her parents, but she has 5 younger siblings and wants to be more independent, so that's why she decided to move out. I asked her if I could move in with her temporarily, and that I would pay her rent as soon as I got a job. She immediately accepted and told me not to worry about rent or anything else until I was in a better position, and we had a good cry together when I told her all about my parents' wedding incident. So this all happened a couple days ago, and I was planning on doing the update then, but my grandma called my parents and my siblings to lecture them about how they were treating me. My brother just sent me a text afterwards with a half-hearted apologize, saying that he didn't know I wasn't included, and that he just thought I wouldn't have fun on the trip, and then I posted the pic just to create drama. My sister, on the other hand, berated me and told me that I kept trying to make public my own problems and pinning them on my family when they are all innocent. It has been weird with my parents ever since they came back from the trip, and at first they berated me and were furious with me, and after that, we've just been ignoring each other. After my grandma called them, they came into my room telling me that if I wanted to put this whole issue to rest, I should shut up about it, and that this could all had already blown over if only I'd kept my mouth shut. I just asked them to leave my room, and then I called my grandma again to tell her what had gone down. She then told me that she and my uncle had bought plane tickets to come down to see me. This was something that I was actually scared about because my grandma's health is not the best, and this kind of effort is a lot for her. And I know how complicated it is for her to get on a plane, so I tried to dissuade her from coming and told her everything would be okay. But she wouldn't listen, and told me that she was long overdue a conversation with my parents and that she wanted to see me. I'm stressed for her, and I feel again like I forced her to take a long, uncomfortable trip because of me, and that maybe I should have dealt with this myself. I do want to see her, and I wish for nothing more than to hug her right now, but I'm worried about her. At least my uncle, Mom's older brother, is coming with her, but I hope she doesn't exhaust herself or nothing happens to her because that would break me. They arrive tomorrow and have not informed my parents of their trip. My grandma asked me to keep it until she gets here. I hope she's able to make my parents see the mistake in their actions, or at the very least, help me break the news to them that I'm moving out very soon, and I plan on being no contact with them. I don't know, I'm worried about her having to do so much for me and bothering her, but I also appreciate and love her so much for doing all this for me. Update 2. Hello, sorry for not having re-updated sooner or commented. As you can imagine if you've seen my last posts, it's been a busy week to say the least. There's been a lot of people messaging me and commenting on the post, and I haven't had time to answer to no one until today, and I'm sorry for that. You all have been so helpful and caring for me and my story, and it's been truly eye-opening and terrifying to see how many people have gone through similar stories of neglect and abuse, and I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to send some kind words to this internet stranger. This update will be long, so sorry about that. I'm just going to continue where I left off. So my grandma called me to tell me she was coming here to see me and help me out. I was very stressed about it because my grandma has a very hard time traveling, so for her to take this trip meant that she would be under enormous stress, and I felt responsible for her since I was the one that called her. She arrived early Monday morning with my uncle, and I went to get her at the airport. Angel, it was a very intense and emotional moment, and as soon as I saw her, I ran to her arms and broke down sobbing. I don't even know if I was able to tell her anything at that moment because of how hard I was crying, and I had so many things to say. Thank you for coming, for being so good to me, for having my back. I'm sorry to have made you take this trip. I feel awful at home. I don't know if my parents love me, but I know you do. Am I an affair child? I truly was hit with all of this, plus the guilt and the anxiety all at once when I saw her, but she held me tight in her arms, telling me everything was going to be okay. My uncle hugged us as well. I don't know how long we stayed like this, but it must have been a while until my uncle told me we should get going. We grabbed a cab and went to their hotel. My grandma had teary eyes, and I could feel her breathing heavily, which scared me, but she kept hugging me and smiling all the way. She had reserved a double room so I could stay with her for these days, and once they were settled in and I was more calm, we sat down and I poured everything out for them. The years of neglect and the emotional abuse, how I was feeling miserable after the trip, but also for years now, how my parents have been trying to make me feel guilty for all of this that has happened, how I was scared about my future, but my end. One priority at the moment now was to move out of that house, even at the expense of my schoolwork, how I have made arrangements to move in with my friend, and I was looking for a job, and I told them about this post, and how some people thought I might be an affair child, and that I was beginning to question that as well. It was a lot, and I could tell they were both really affected by what I was saying, but they kept comforting me and making me feel safe to open up to them. After I unloaded all my concerns with them, my grandma reassured me that I had nothing to worry about anymore and that she would be here for me always. First of all, she reassured me that I was not an affair child and that both my parents were thrilled when my mother got pregnant with me and that she knew the ultimate deal breaker for my mom was cheating and she believed it was the same for my father. Apparently, the favoritism began showing when I was around 3 to 4 years old, when my parents were constantly complaining about having a young kid in the house, and they were bothered because they could take my older siblings to their stuff, but not me, and I was also very shy and a bit of a crybaby, which they had no patience with and made me very different from my siblings. She told me that she knew that my parents had saved more than enough for my college. They're really well off, so that had never been a concern for me until now, thinking they might pull the funds away from me for my education. But that if they tried to not pay for my schooling, she would take care of it, and that she just wouldn't let me drop out because of money concerns. She also told me she would help me with rent and an allowance to move out. She was very generous, and I thanked her for it all. But I also told her that this experience had been eye-opening in the sense that I never realized how privileged I had been economically all my life. For all their faults, my parents have pampered me, money-wise, all my life. I went to private school, I have a rather large monthly allowance, I've had a card for years now, and they have never objected to any of my expenses. Seeing the stories here, I realized how good I've had it so far and how being dependable on them all my life made me so exposed to losing everything, and I want to be independent now, not just from my parents, but from everyone. I feel like I need to learn to stand up on my own. Writing this, and having just read all the stories of people in truly awful situations, makes me feel like I've been a spoiled brat all my life, TBH. She insisted on me accepting my help until I don't need it anymore, and I accepted that, but I'll still will look for a job and try to make it out on my own. We relaxed for a while in the hotel because we were all exhausted from the morning, but in the afternoon we grabbed a cab and went to my house. My parents were extremely surprised to see my grandma and uncle with me when I entered the door, but before they could say anything, my grandma told me to go pack all my essentials while they talked to them. I rushed upstairs, and I could hear my grandma and uncle berating my parents for all that they had put me through. At first, I also heard my parents trying to defend themselves, but eventually they quiet down. When I came downstairs with 2 suitcases and my backpack full to the brim with everything important that I had in my room, they were all in the living room. My father was beet red and my mother was sobbing like a child, and when she saw me, she extended her arms on my direction, saying she was sorry, but I just said, "Save it," with the coldest tone I could muster, and my dad said that I didn't have to be jerk, to which both my uncle and grandma told him to shut up. I left the house at that moment and waited for the cab outside. In the hotel, my grandma reassured me that I wouldn't have to go back to them, and that they told her my college tuition was never in question for them, and that they had planned to throw me an extravagant birthday party to make up for the wedding mess, and were going to be giving me a car as an apology for everything, but my grandma was having none of that BS, because it was pretty obvious to her that they were only trying to save face, and they were coming up with these things on the fly, and that a party and a car would not make up for all that they have put me through. Apparently, the moment that broke my mother was when she told her that I had even questioned my paternity, and she started crying then, but my grandma told her that what else could they expect when they had excluded me repeatedly from all family events since I was a child. She told me that she would make sure they made the payments to my school unless I preferred to completely cut ties with them and have her pay until I can pay myself, and I asked her to do that. I felt bad because I feel like it's not her responsibility, but I truly don't want anything else from my parents anymore. And although my grandma is pretty well off herself, she's not as wealthy as my parents, but she reassured me that everything is all right and that everything going to me would be taken away from my mom's inheritance. So the next day we went with my friend, her parents, and grandma to the studio where we were planning to move, and immediately upon arriving, my grandma said, "Absolutely not." I knew from pictures that the studio was very, very small and dirty, but we saw water damage and mold in the bathroom and kitchenette, and there was also rust in the little old appliances. I knew all of this beforehand, but I figured I could live with that, at least for a while. But the thing that the adults pointed out that actually made me and my friend change our minds was the fact that this studio was street level in a bad neighborhood in a building that didn't seem particularly safe and had bullet holes on the walls, which I didn't even know what those were until my friend's dad pointed it out. So Grandma and my friend's parents said they would look for an apartment for us in a better location, and they'd help cover the costs. Both my friend and I want to be independent, but we realize that with our most likely minimum wage jobs in such a high demand area, we won't be able to find anything better on our own. So the plan is we're going to look for a 2-bedroom apartment, and me and my friend are going to pay what we had previously planned for the studio, and her parents and my grandma will cover the difference. I know it's still quite spoiled of me to expect that help from my grandma, but after seeing the studio in person, I truly wouldn't have felt safe there. My friend's parents, who were somewhat aware of what I was going through, told me that I could move in with them until we find a nice apartment, to which I'm extremely grateful since Grandma is going back in a couple of days, and I've been staying in the hotel with her ever since. Apparently, my friend, her parents, and my grandma spoke about this before coming to me to make sure I had some safe place to stay until we move into the apartment, which is still to be found. I teared up a little as I thanked them, seeing how people were rallying behind me to offer help. Since then, I've been moving some of the stuff I had left at my parents' and setting my space in my friend's. My mom keeps crying and apologizing every time I go back, and even my father has said sorry, but I remain distant and cold towards them. My sister called and said that our mother was a mess, and that I was a D*C cake for what I had done, but before she could say anything else, I hanged up the phone and blocked her. I was going to block my brother as well, when I saw that he had sent me a very long message apologizing again and again for all that he has done to me, and for not realizing our parents were treating me so poorly. He says he's been doing a lot of self-reflection on the days since Grandma called, and realized that he had been in the wrong for assuming I wasn't on the trip because I wouldn't want to go, and for just allowing my parents to exclude me for all those years. I sent a brief reply thanking him for his words, but telling him I need space and I was not ready to accept his apology. I feel like he might be genuine because he has never been nasty to me the way my sister has, just aloof towards me. But I also feel like I need to keep him away for the moment. Also, keeping a bridge up with my family feels like the right thing to do right now that everything is so fresh. Maybe in the future he'll show me he's just as nasty as everyone else, and I'd block him. But as long as he respects my boundaries, I feel better not cutting him off completely. I've also made an appointment with a therapist who specializes in neglected teens, and I have my first preliminary visit next week, again funded by my grandma, which makes me feel ever more eager to find a job ASAP to take the burden off of her, even if she tells me time and time again she's happy to do all of this for me. That's where things stand right now. I don't know if I'll update again, maybe when I start classes or move to the apartment, but right now I'm just trying to enjoy some time with my grandma and my uncle and learn to grow and get rid of these feelings of guilt and depression that have been plaguing me for so long. I want to thank once again all of this community for being so nice and helpful to me, and all of you who have messaged me with your own personal stories of getting kicked out or having to learn how to make it on your own at a too early age. You've helped me feel a lot less alone and made me realize that things can get better if I work hard for it. I feel kind of spoiled for having such an amazing support system on my grandma, uncles, and my friend. But you all guys are right. Reaching out has been the absolute best decision I could have taken, and opening up about my feelings to those who love me and to all of you internet friends has absolutely saved me, so thank you. Really, I'm more grateful than words can ever tell. Update 3. Hello Reddit, it's me again with yet another update on the wild ride that is my family life. Things have taken some pretty shocking turns, and honestly, I'm still reeling from the events of the past few weeks. After my last post, I thought maybe, just maybe, my parents would start to show some genuine remorse for how they'd neglected me. But boy, was I wrong. Instead, what I got was a masterclass in manipulation and damage control, and I've got the full story for you here. It started with an invitation to dinner from my parents. They said they wanted to make things right and heal as a family. Given everything that's happened, I was skeptical, but I agreed to go, hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. We met at a high-end restaurant, the kind where you feel like you have to dress up just to fit in. From the moment I walked in, I could tell something was off. My parents were unusually affectionate, showering me with hugs and loud declarations of their love. It felt like we were actors in some cheesy family drama. The dinner itself was even more over the top. My parents were piling on the apologies and laying out their plans for the future, including a college fund they suddenly set up in my name and a belated celebration party just for me. All of this in front of an audience that included a couple of local influencers known for their community gossip blogs. The pieces clicked together. This was a PR stunt, not a heartfelt reunion. As we ate, they kept up their act, talking about how much they'd learned and how they were committed to being better parents. I played along, but my gut was churning with the realization that this was all for show. The real confirmation came as we were leaving when I overheard my mom whisper to my dad, "That should fix our image." It was all I needed to hear to know that their apologies were just smoke and mirrors. I left the restaurant feeling used and angry. I couldn't believe they would go to such lengths just to save face. On the drive home with my grandma, who I had called to pick me up, I told her everything. She was furious but supported my decision to finally cut ties. That night I lay awake, thinking about everything that had happened. It became clear to me that if I wanted to stop this cycle, I needed to stand up and expose their behavior, not just privately but publicly. The next morning, I drafted a long post detailing the entire dinner charade, the overheard conversation, and my decision to distance myself from their manipulative tactics. I posted it online, and the response was overwhelming. My story resonated with many, and my inbox was flooded with messages of support and similar stories of family manipulation. It was both heartbreaking and affirming to see how many people understood my situation. Emboldened by the support, I decided it was time to make some big changes in my life. First, I focused on securing my financial independence. I met with a financial advisor to understand my options for college funding beyond the so-called fund my parents set up. I applied for scholarships and grants, determined to pay for my education on my own terms. Simultaneously, my friend and I accelerated our apartment search. We found a small but comfortable place in a good neighborhood that was within our budget. We moved in together, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace and stability. To further my independence, I also started a part-time job at a local bookstore. It wasn't much, but it helped cover my share of the rent and other expenses. It also gave me a sense of normalcy and routine, which I desperately needed. Amidst these changes, I continued my therapy sessions, which have been instrumental in helping me process everything and plan for a healthier future. My therapist supported my decision to distance myself from my parents and helped me develop strategies for maintaining boundaries. As I settled into my new life, I realized that the freedom I felt was worth all the hardship. I was finally making decisions for myself, without being swayed by my parents' manipulative tactics. So, Reddit, here I am, living my best life on my terms. I've learned that sometimes cutting toxic ties is necessary for personal growth, and while it's not easy, it's worth it. Thanks for all your support and advice. It's made all the difference. I'll keep you updated as I navigate this new chapter, but for now, I'm just enjoying the peace that comes with being in control of my own story. So, am I the a-hole for going public and cutting off my parents financially and emotionally? I think not, but let me know what you think. Your input has been invaluable. Update 4. Since my last post, where I thought I was finally starting to get my life on track, things took a dramatic turn. Remember how my parents were all about public image due to their business? Well, it turns out their desperation to protect that image has led them to take some extreme steps. A few days ago, I received a legal notice. My parents are suing me for defamation, claiming my posts have severely damaged their personal and professional reputation, which is closely tied to their family-oriented business. The kicker? They're not only demanding a retraction and apology, but also pressing for damages that are frankly astronomical. I was shell-shocked. Legal battles were the last thing I needed. I immediately called my grandma, who has always been my rock. After calming me down, she sprang into action and got in touch with a lawyer to help me handle the situation. Turns out, she's also decided to support me through college independently, wanting to ensure that whatever happens, my education won't be disrupted. The past few weeks have been a blur of lawyer meetings, gathering evidence, and trying to balance work and studies. My life feels like it's split between trying to maintain normalcy and preparing for a courtroom drama I never asked for. The legal advice I've received has been reassuring, though. My lawyer believes that since my posts were based on factual experiences and shared without malicious intent, we have a strong defense against the defamation claims. Still, the stress of knowing I'm being sued by my own parents is overwhelming. As if the lawsuit wasn't enough, I've started noticing the ripple effects. Their business is suffering, not just from my posts, but from their own actions being brought to light. Clients and partners don't want to associate with the controversy, and it's spiraling. I hear about it not just from the legal side, but from old family friends who are suddenly in the middle, some siding with me, others with my parents. Through all this, community support has been my lifeline. After sharing about the lawsuit, the response was massive. Messages of solidarity, advice, and even offers of financial help with legal costs have poured in. It's shown me how powerful honest sharing can be, and how many people are willing to stand up against what they see as injustice. On a more personal note, this situation has strangely brought my brother and me closer together. He's been a surprising source of support, expressing his own frustrations with our parents' choices. We've been talking a lot more, and he's helped me feel less alone in all this. Despite the chaos, I'm trying to focus on my studies and the support systems I still have. My grandma's unwavering support, especially her stepping in to cover my college expenses, has been my anchor through this storm. I'm also finding strength in advocacy, sharing my story not just online, but in speaking engagements and panels about family dynamics and legal intimidation. So, Reddit, here I am, caught between fighting a legal battle and trying to move forward with my life. Am I the a-hole for continuing to stand my ground against my parents' lawsuit, despite the turmoil it's causing in their lives and business? Your thoughts and support have been invaluable so far, and I'm more grateful than ever for this community.